Welcome back to Library Trust YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll learn how to make this gorgeous flare kimono dress. Okay, it's a kimono dress because the sleeve is cut together with the main bodies, and it's a circle dress. So this is the sleeve of the dress, and it has a flare attached to it. It's a 720-degree flare, and it also has a bishop collar on the neckline area. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. If this is what you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to make this kimono dress using this Ankara fabric, and Ankara fabric is by the length is by 45 inches. So if you are using maybe adire or prep or whatever fabric that is by 60, it's going to be much easier for you. But because I'm using Ankara, which is 45 inches, I'm going to be having some joining at the hem of this dress, and then I'm going to show us how we're going to be doing that. So I folded my Ankara fabric in a 180 degree. I folded it as if I want to cut a 180 degree flare because this is a circle dress, and I'm going to be illustrating how I did this folding using this paper. So you fold your fabric into two first, like this. Then after folding into two, you fold in form of a cone. So you can see I folded into two now. Then you fold again like you're folding a cone, like this. So into four, you can see I have folded this now. I folded my front and back together because they are now for 1, 2, 3 and 4, because this part is closed. So this part that is completely closed, that's the longest part, is going to be my center fold, and that is where I'm going to start all my measurements. Then this open part is going to be the side for both the front and back. I hope you get that. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to be doing now is to rule a straight line here. Okay, so this is going to be my starting point, and it's also going to be my shoulder point. So the measurements you need to rule this straight point is going to be the measurement from your center back all the way to just like 1 inch below your bicep, or wherever you want your sleeve to stop. Okay, so now from my center back, or another thing you can do is just to measure your shoulder. The shoulder I'm working with is 16 inches, so 16 divided by 2 is going to give me 8 inches. So from this center fold, remember I said this folded point is your center fold, I'll measure the 18 inches, which is here. I hope that chalk is visible. Okay, so now after measuring that 8 inches, the next measurement you're going to be taking is your sleeve measurement. That's where you want your sleeve to stop. Like I said, can stop on your bicep or just below your bicep. My bicep is around 6 inches, so I'll just measure 7 inches or 7.5, okay, for the purpose of allowance, because I'm cutting both my bodies and my sleeve together in form of a kimono. Okay, so I hope you can see this better now. So I'm just going to exhaust what I have, and because I have my full length here, everything is 15 inches altogether, so I ruled my starting point at this point, 15 inches. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do now is to take my armhole measurement. So before then, I'm just going to take my neckline measurement. So if you see, the neckline is like a 30 neckline, and it has a bishop collar, so it's not going to be too low. The neck width I'm going to work with here is going to be around 2 inches or 2.5 inches or 3 inches. So I'm working with 3 inches, and then for the neck depth, for the back I'm working with 1.5 inches, and then for the front I'm working with 3 inches. So I'm going to be connecting this neckline using my curved ruler. Okay, so this is for the back, and this is for my front neckline. Okay, so I hope you can see that clearly. Then the next thing I'm going to do now is to do my shoulder slope. So to drop my shoulder, I'll be dropping my shoulder by 1.5 inches or 2 inches from where my sleeve stops, which is here. Okay, so I've dropped it there. Then from there, I'm going to draw a shoulder slope to my neck point here. Okay, so I want to simplify this as much as possible. So this is my shoulder slope. So now the next thing now is for us to take our sleeve opening, and your sleeve opening is round that measurement where your sleeve stops. Okay, you should take that measurement loosely because you don't want it too tight. So I have around 14 inches here. So 14 divided by 2 is going to give me 7 inches. So from where my shoulder slope stops, I'm going to measure 7 inches downwards. So from here now, I'm measuring 7 inches downwards. Okay, so I'm adding 1 inch allowance for my seam allowance, so I'm measuring 8 inches. This is going to be a total of 8 inches, and then I'm just measuring it inwards like that. Okay, so now from that point where it stops, I'm just going to remember this for my sleeve because I'm adding a flare to this sleeve, so that the sleeve will be distinct and I'll be able to see it well. I'm just going inwards by 2 inches from where my sleeve stops. So you can see now I'm going inwards by 2 inches, and then from there I'm going to connect all the way to the hem. So let me just quickly do what I have done so far. Is here I took my neckline measurement. This is for my back and this is for my front. Then here I did my shoulder slope and then I connected it like that. So here I measured my round sleeve and then I inputted that measurement there, which is here. So for my sleeves to be obvious, I went inwards by 2 inches. I went inwards by 2 inches, which is around here. So I stopped here. The next one is for me to measure my full length. This is a short dress and my short dress measurement is 40 inches. But like I said, if you see the way this is folded now, this part is longer than this part, which means I'll have a shortage. From my starting point here now, I'll not be able to have a full 40 inches from this point. Okay, this point is still going to give me 40 inches because it's long, but I don't have enough 40 inches here, so I'll be adding to it. So to add to it now, I'm just going to be cutting extra fabric. Okay, so if I cut my extra fabric now, you can see we have it folded into 4 1 2. This first 2 is full. You can see I'll get my full measurement here, but this last 2 here now is not full. So what I'm going to do now is to cut my fabric now. You can see I folded it into 2, something that will make up this length that I have here. So here now I'm going to place this here, but you should be mindful of this part because you don't want your fabric to this thing to be shorter by the end of the day. So this part does not actually have any problem. You're okay with the length here. The length here is the issue because let's just test this with tape rule. If I place my tape rule here, you can see that I have around 5.5 inches here, but in this case if I place it here, I have just 3.5. so we are making up this piece. So if I want to measure 5.5 inches round, you can see I'll have my full 5.5 on this point. I have 5.5 here, I have 5.5 here, but you can see that if I connect it like this, I will have a shortage here. I'll make my full 5.5 here. So to make up for this shortage, I'm adding extra fabric. So I'm just going to pin this fabric with allowance. Remember, you are still going to sew it back, so you're not going to place it directly on it like this, so that you're not going to have shortage. So you just place it on it by 1/2 inch or whatever it is that you're going to sew. So once I place it on it like this, I'm going to pin it, okay, so that I can cut it out. So once I place it on it, you can open it out, you can pin it. So after pinning it, you have something like this. So when you have it complete like this, that is when you will take your 5.5 inches measurement. So if I'm taking my 5.5 inches, I'll take it round like this. I hope you get that. I'm using this method because I want this dress to be really full. If you don't want to have joining with it and you're using Ankara fabric, you can cut it in an inline form, okay, but because I want it really full, I want it to be like this. So now I'll complete this length measurement here now. So if I cut this out, this is what I'm going to have. So you can see, so I'll remove this and then I have this. You can see it's complete, and the excess that we have here is because I'm still going to join it. So before you do anything, what you're going to do now is to open this, join this to this. I remember it's 2. You join one to this side like this, you sew it to it. Once you sew it, it will stay in place for you and it will make it up, and then you do the same thing for the one below. Okay, so once my flare is complete, now the next thing I'm just going to do now is to connect from the 2 inches that I measured here inwards. From that 2 inches now, I'm going to connect to the hem of the dress like this to make my full dress. Then I can now cut out my dress. If I cut this out now, on this mark now, I'll cut out the arm area. Then here I'll cut my shoulder slope and then cut my neckline. So once I open it, this is what I'm going to have. So I'll just cut this open. This is what I'll go to have, and you can see the shortage that I have here. By the time I sew this to it, is going to complete it for me. So you can see what we have, and then you can see that our sleeve is cut together with our main bodies, and then this dress is going to be really full. So everything that I've done here now, I'm going to replicate it on my main fabric, because the fabric is going to be really big and my camera may not capture everything. That was why I had to do that on the paper. Okay, so I've moved this to the floor because my table is not big enough. So everything that I did with the paper I've done now. This is my neckline, this is the back, and this is the front neckline, and then this is the hem area. Remember, I went in by 2 inches, so from that 2 inches I just connected it to the hem, and then I measured my full gown length, which is 40 inches, and this is the joint that I have. You can see that I've pinned them together now. So this is for the first one, and this is the second one. So you can see the second one is also pinned. So I'm just going to sew it neatly, and then I made sure that I used the selvage area so that it will be neat inside. If you don't use this area, then it means you need to serge it. So I used the selvage when I was cutting my extra fabric so that it's going to be as neat as possible. Then you should try to follow your pattern. You can see that this straight pattern that I have is what I continued there, so that your fabric, it will not be so obvious that you joined it. So when you open this up now, this is what you're going to have. It's going to be really full. So you can see how full this dress is going to be. So you can see how full this is, and these are our neckline. So what I'm going to do first now is to join them by the shoulder area on the sleeve, and then I'm going to go ahead and join it on the sides. Then I'm going to join the joining that I have here pinned also. So after that, I'll go ahead now and cut my flare for the sleeve, and then cut my neckband also. So I'll go and do that, then I'll bring it back to show us. Okay, so I've gone to sew it. So you can see the side. So on this side, I forgot to mention, when you are connecting the sleeve to the main body, don't make it too sharp. So you can go in by 1 inch and then use that as a guide to curve it. So if you have been conversant with kimono dresses, you understand this. So I forgot to mention that. And then on the back part here, on the neckline, on the back neckline, I opened this at the center back, because this is the turtle neckline is going to be really tight. So for the head to pass through it, I measured 5 inches downward, and then I opened it by 5 inches. Then I went ahead to turn it neatly with a bias. Okay, so those are the modifications that I did off camera. So now I have my dress like this, is almost ready. The next thing I'm going to do to cut out my bishop collar, I'll measure round the neckline. Okay, so I'm measuring the neckline round now, and this measurement is going to give me around, okay, I have around 19.5 inches. So I can add extra 1 inches, or I can just make it 21 inches. So I'll cut a bishop collar of 21 inches. I already have a detailed tutorial on how to do that on the channel. So if you don't know how to cut a bishop collar, you may want to check that tutorial out. I'll probably link it down in the description box below. So here on the sleeve area, I'm going to be adding a flare sleeve to it. But before I add my flare sleeve, I just want to modify the sleeve. Okay, so I want it to have like this effect of one side of this upper part shorter than the lower part. So what I'm going to do is, on my upper part, let me arrange it up so that we'll see. Okay, so I'll put it on fold. This is my neckline area, this is my kimono sleeve area. So on this upper part here now, I'll go inwards by 2 inches. You can do more or less depending on what you want. So if I go inwards, I can't find my chalk, so I'm just going to use this. So if I go inwards here by 2 inches, then from that 2 inches, using my ruler or a slightly curved part of your ruler, I'm going to connect it downwards to the hem of this other one. I hope you can see what I'm doing. So by the time I finish, you will see the effect this is going to give to this dress. So now I'll take the two together, the two sleeves together, because I want to cut it together, and then I'll use my scissors to cut that out. So I just wanted to have that effect there. Okay, so now I've cut this out, and this is what my sleeve is looking like now. So now the next thing for me now is to measure this. So this is on fold. I can measure it on fold and then multiply by 2. So for my sleeve, I have around 9 inches here on fold. So if I multiply by 2, I have 18 inches. So this 18 inches is going to be the circumference that I'm going to use to get the radius for my flare. And then for the flare, I'm going to be using a flare of around 5 inches. So the length is going to be 5 inches. The radius is going to be this 18 inches multiply 18 inches divided by 6.28. So if you want your flare to be really full, okay, I have a detailed tutorial on how to draft different types of flare, so I'm not going to be going into this in detail, but if you want to really understand it, you may want to check that tutorial out. So the circumference is 28 inches. Okay, that's what I'm going to get my radius. So if you want to get your radius, now you just divide this 28 divided by 6.28. what you have is going to be your radius. So because I want this radius to be really coily and bouncy, I'm not just going to be cutting one flare, I'm going to be cutting 2 flares. So this is the formula for cutting a 360-degree flare. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a 720-degree flare. That's 360 multiplied by 2. And to do this, the first thing I will do is to divide my radius by 2. So this 18, not 28. 9 times 3. Remember the round armhole that we measured was 9 on fold, and we multiplied it to give us 18. So to do this 720, this circumference, I'm going to divide this by 2, and that's going to give me 9 inches. That's 18 divided by 2. So it is this new 9 inches I'm going to use to cut my flare. So to cut my flare, the radius will now be 9. The radius is going to be 9 divided by 6.28. Okay, whatever I have there is going to be the radius, and then I'm going to cut 2 of it. So after cutting 2 of it, I'm going to join them together. So for the radius, I used 9 divided by 6.28, and that gave me around 1.5 inches approximately. So I use that for my radius, and then the length of this flare, the total length is 6 inches including seam allowance. So I cut 2 of this for the main fabric, and then also 2 of this for the lining. Remember, we are cutting a 720-degree flare, and that's going to be double 2 flare to make our actual circumference. So I'm doing this because I want this flare to be really full, and I don't want to pleat it, and at the same time I want it to have that flounce effect. So after cutting it, I cut 2 for the main fabric, and then I joined it together here. So let me just open it out so that we'll see what I'm saying. So I cut 2 for my main fabric, and then I joined it together here. Then I also cut 2 for the lining and also joined together. So on the lining part, I added gum stay to it on just the lining part. So I went ahead to sew it on the hem, and then I added crinoline to it. So I sewed the crinoline round, and then I covered it up and top stitched so that my crinoline can lie flat. So if you have a steam iron, you can use this to iron it flat if you don't want to top stitch on it. So this is what I have. This is for the first flare. So that's going to be 4 in all. Remember, for a 720-degree flare, you're going to be cutting 2 for the main fabric and 2 for the lining. So this is for the first sleeve, this is for the second sleeve. So the total of the flare that I cut was 8. 4 for main fabric for both sleeve and 4 for the lining. So I'll link that video on the description box. That video explained all types of flare. So if you don't get this, you may watch it for better understanding. So now these are my flares, and you can see how beautiful they are looking. So what I just have to do now is to sew it around my sleeve area. Okay, so I'm just going to sew it around this sleeve opening that I have here. And then also for my neckline, I've gone ahead to cut out my bishop collar. So So for the bishop collar, I used Ankara for the main fabric, then I used the black sequence fabric for the, I used Ankara as the lining because I don't want this sequence to be hurting my neck. So I used Ankara that is smooth for the lining, and then I used sequence for the main fabric. So I'm going to sew that around my neckline also. Again, I have a detailed tutorial on how to cut a bishop sleeve, so bishop collar. So you don't know how to cut a bishop collar, you may want to check that out. So I'll go ahead now and sew this to my neckline and also sew this to my sleeve, then I'll bring it back to show us. Okay, so our collar is fixed now. You can see the sequence is outwards like this, as you can see, and then the Ankara is inside so that the sequence is not going to be hurting the skin. Okay, and this is the full dress, this is the sleeve part. So remember that I went upwards on the sleeve area like this to have this effect. So I want this to be higher than it to just descend downwards like this, and you can see how beautiful our sleeve is looking. So when you're turning this sleeve, make sure that you turn it in a way that you insert the sleeve in between the main bodies of the flare and the lining, because you don't want this part to be rough because it's going to show. So you can see how fine it is, or if you just add it directly, make sure you clean it up with a bias or you either serge it. And the reason why I use the same fabric is because you can see the flare is a short one and it has crinoline, so it's going to be opened like this. So I don't want the lining, another fabric, to be showing on the under part. That was why I used the Ankara for the lining and the main fabric also. So this is the full feel of the dress, and you can see how gorgeous this is looking. It's a full flare, as you can see. These are the sleeve. So I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed this, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.